there's anybody that doesn't get in here quite yet. Again, make sure you've sent your quiz in, submitted your quiz if you haven't done that yet. And yeah, let me just walk us through just kind of real briefly what we're doing this week. Let me pull up our week 1 overview page and then share my screen with you. Oh, sorry, week 2 actually, not week 1. Okay. Okay, so yeah, just briefly here, this is what we got going this week. So sync session today, and then quiz 2 due within the next couple minutes, and then we'll have a recorded lecture for Wednesday over chapter 2, finishing up the metabolism stuff that we'll start right now. And then we'll have a synchronous session on Friday. And on Friday, it'll be a little bit different. It'll be our first TBL day. Okay, so you guys will be in those, in the teams that I sent you into the first time we met. But the way it'll start is so you will study some material ahead of time. Okay, and let me just show you exactly what you're studying by showing you the right pages on the PDF. Okay, so there's going to be some material that you study ahead of time for the next section, and you will study that. I won't actually teach on that in class. That'll be just really on you to study, and then we'll have a couple of activities that we'll do on it. But you'll study it ahead of time, and it's all the stuff on the hormones. Okay, so this is the beginning of the note packet here. So we're going to do metabolism today. We did skeletal, muscle, and nervous system last week. Metabolism today, and Wednesday, and then Friday we'll start the TBL days. First one here is on the hormones. So let me go to that page where that starts, so I can kind of show you what you need to study ahead of time and what you don't. Okay. It's a big document. Hope it doesn't crash my computer. We'll be all right. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing today. Just a little further. Okay, so right here. So starting with the endocrine system. Yeah, so that's on page 44 of your PDF. Okay, so it starts there, page 44 of your PDF. Okay, and there's a bunch of questions on these slides, kind of like normal. There's also some blanks to fill in. So you're going to use the textbook and work through these slides, answer these questions. Okay, so as you go through, it's really just a bunch of questions. This is the one that you might have to look up a little bit outside of the textbook. Okay, this stuff about insulin and what GLUT4 does. Okay, so you might need to do just a brief Google search if you're not familiar with that. Okay, so all these questions here, so you're just filling all this stuff in. Okay, filling it all in, and then let's see when we get to the end of it, so I can tell you where to stop studying ahead of time. So this would be, these two kind of flow charts are a great thing to fill in just to get your head wrapped around what you need to know. Okay, and then that's it. Once you get to page 52, these activities, you don't need to study these before class. Okay, we'll work on those in class. All right, so you're studying those hormones using your book, and you'll come to class, you'll hop on Zoom, and then right about at 11 o'clock when class starts, I'll send you, then you can go ahead and open up your IRAT, okay, your individual rapid assessment test. And so you'll take a quiz on this stuff here that you're studied ahead of time, and I haven't taught on it yet, okay? And then after you take that individual quiz, you won't get any feedback on it right away. You won't know how you did, or you won't get to see which ones are wrong or right. And then I'll send you into your breakout rooms, and you'll take that same quiz again as a team, okay? And so you'll still need to submit. Everybody still needs to submit individually, but you'll still take it as a team. You can decide on which answer is the best for each one. Submit that. That'll take about half of our class on Friday, and then the second half we'll jump into these notes here, and we'll go through some of these questions. I'll send you to breakout rooms for a couple of them to work on, but we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. Okay, so that's what those TBL days look like, at least the first part of each of those TBL days, and so that's what Friday will look like. Okay, any questions on that? Nothing? Okay. All right, so yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Again, always remember to go to these pages here for at the beginning of the week to see what's going on for the week. This is where you'll access IRAT1 and TRAT1 for that day, okay? And then after class, I'll always post the link of the video right here, so you can always hop right there and grab it, okay? So that under week 1 now, there's 2 videos posted from last week, so you can always grab those. Okay, any questions on any of that or anything else that's coming up in class or anything else that might be confusing about the structure of the class so far? Okay. All right. So a couple things. I'm doing things a little bit differently this semester. You guys wouldn't know because you haven't taken the class before. But one thing that I did is I'm putting a little bit more material into this first section that leads up to exam 1. And it's really all of the review material, things you would have gotten from a different class. Okay. So we're doing the metabolism stuff, the hormones. We're doing the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, the skeletal muscle stuff. And that's pretty much it. Okay, before, a couple of those used to be in exam 2 section, but I really wanted to kind of put all of the stuff that would be review that you've had either in anatomy and physiology or a biology or chemistry class. I wanted to have that all in exam 1. And then when we get into exam 2, it'll be mostly new information as we move on and apply kind of these basic concepts of each system to broader concepts of response to exercise. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing that I'm doing a little bit differently this semester is, to be honest, I just got a little tired of multiple choice questions on exams. And so there's not going to be any anymore. Okay? So the exams are worth a little bit less than they were before. So it used to be 300-point exams. There would be about 55 points multiple choice and about 45 short answer. And I just kind of, the more I've taught this class, the more I've gotten into what this class is really about. And the more I've seen you guys really get what you can get out of this class, not you specifically, but Point Loma students, to see what you can get out of this class. This class is really about kind of learning how to understand physiology and how to learn it. It's not so much just about memorizing everything. There's going to be some memorization, but the problem with memorization is if you don't keep using it right away, it just kind of goes away, you know. So it's not the best thing. But really, if you could get one thing out of this class, it would be how to learn physiology. Okay, because when you go to PT school or PA school or whatever the program is you're heading into, you're going to become a personal trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, whatever it is. If you can understand kind of how to learn physiology, then if you got a problem that has to do with someone's body, a physiological problem, then you can dive in there and you can learn it yourself. Okay, you might not remember everything from this class or other classes, but if you understand the process of learning and physiology and how putting those things together, and that's way more important than anything. So all that to be said, that what I'm doing is the exams are all short answer. Okay, so there's going to be 5 short answer questions that are worth how much? Yeah, 15 points each. So it used to be 4 short answers. Is that right? 5? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 5 short answer questions worth 15 points each. That gets us up to the 75. And there'll be a couple options as well. You don't have to do that. I won't only give you 5. I'll give you some to choose from. Okay, and it's going to be typed out on your computer, obviously, but you're going to need to know the broader concepts, like take it all the way from the nervous system starting an action potential in the brain, all the steps with that action potential, going to how do we activate the muscle cell at the neuromuscular junction, how do we go through the process of releasing calcium and binding to troponin, doing that whole cross-bridge cycling, taking that all the way from top to bottom, right? So putting it all together, okay? See some of you guys smiling, probably not smiles of happiness, more smiles of concern. But that's kind of a larger concept, right? They're putting all those things together. Obviously there's some memorization in there, no question. There's memorization, but it's kind of just putting a lot of things together. Instead of just having a bunch of multiple choice questions about that, it's just putting it all out there, okay, in one shot. So that's kind of the setup, and I think that's important for you to know early on. That's what I'm telling you now, because it may change a little bit the way that you study, right? And so another question could be like, explain how the body controls blood glucose with the endocrine system during exercise, right? And then you got to think about all the different hormones that we're going to talk about on Friday and how those work together, what they cause as far as releasing more glucose, less glucose, things like that. Okay, so it's kind of broad concepts where you got to put a lot of stuff together. Okay, and There's no study guide per se, but what there is we're going to do a gallery walk before each exam, and those have a bunch of prompts that are, your team chooses one of those prompts to fill out. And I'm trying to remember if I haven't posted yet or not, but if I don't, I'll put them up there, and I think I might already have them there. But those are your best study guides, because the prompts are very similar to the short answer questions, okay? So you're going to choose one to do with your team, which is going to be something you dive into deeply, but then all of them you should know for by the time the exam comes, and that's your best study guide, okay? So if I don't have those posted already somewhere around the exams in Canvas, I'll put them up later today, okay? So that's just kind of you just want to get your mind right for the exams, because I'm kind of getting you ready for that. You want to be in that mindset of I'm going to have to be writing out short answer questions of what this looks like, okay? So questions on that, clarifications, anything you want me to address before we hop into metabolism today? Okay, all right, so yeah, so let me actually share my screen from my iPad here instead. Oh, stop this one first. Okay. All right. Okay, let me show you one more thing real quick. Yeah, I don't always necessarily show the questions or the answers to the quizzes, but let's go ahead and do that. I'm still struggling with how to exactly do this over a Zoom thing. But yeah, this is quiz 1 you guys have already taken. So go ahead and just take a quick look here at the answers. This way you can kind of see what you got wrong, what you got right. Okay, and the numbers there are the page numbers that you would find this information in the book. So you can get those. Again, I always start with this verse on this topic, because to me it's just kind of one of these amazing things of the human body that not only is about the human body, but it actually spans this gap across all life forms in the at least all. Plants have a slightly different system of doing this, but their purpose is to still make ATP, just like ours is. But all animals have this very similar method of creating ATP that we do. So it's kind of this connecting point across all organisms is ATP, and then the way that we make it is very similar to animals, and it's just this incredible process. And actually, this image right here that's on the back of all the slides is this incredibly complex enzyme called ATP synthase. And ATP synthase is the one that really produces all the ATP. 95 to 99% of the ATP in the body is produced by this enzyme at the end of the electron transport chain. So we'll get to that one more with the recorded lecture, but yeah, it's my favorite enzyme, and I'm sure all of you have a favorite enzyme. So I'm gonna go around the room and ask you all to report your favorite enzyme. Just kidding, just joking. Yeah, I'm a total nerd, and I think that's good. I think that's what you want for professors and nerds. But either way, that's what I am. So yeah, love this enzyme. ATP synthase is just a beautiful depiction, and to me it kind of feels like holy ground when we get into this discussion of metabolism and how ATP is formed. So yeah, so that's a little bit about that. So just kind of some overview stuff, some brief stuff here about the overall process of metabolism. Obviously we start with bringing food into our bodies in some way, and our 3 main energy sources, which are found in food, is proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, right? Proteins we have to break down into their individual amino acids before we can pop them into the Krebs cycle or other places along the oxidative system. But we don't talk too much about that. If you take exercise nutrition with Dr. Lynch, you'll dive into that a little bit deeper than you do in this class. And then fats we break down into free fatty acids and glycerol for the most part through multiple processes. And again, we're kind of popping those into the Krebs cycle and other places along the path. But again, we won't talk about that one too much in this class. We'll spend most of our time on carbohydrate metabolism, okay? Because it's the most common for exercise. It's definitely the primary fuel for exercise. So we're going to talk mostly about glucose or glycogen. And so glycogen stores are glucose, okay? And so that's where we'll be headed for the most part. But obviously those other fuels can be burnt. We can also burn alcohol, it's not shown in this one, and different process. Okay, so most of this centers around the mitochondria, right? The oxidative system centers around the mitochondria. Most of us have seen little images of mitochondria that look something like this, like a little bean of some sort, right? Maybe like a little kidney bean. And it's interesting to know that mitochondria really only look like little beans right before cells divide. Most of the time they look more something like this, kind of like just like glob of gelatinous kind of matrix is what it's called. It's more known as a mitochondrial matrix instead of just individual mitochondria. And it's just kind of, they're all kind of together, right? But then when a cell gets close to cell division, it has to kind of put it all together so it doesn't get chopped up when the cell's dividing. And that's when they look like this. Okay, so most of the time they look like, yeah, not like individual beans, but more like a matrix. Okay, we got tons of folded layers inside of mitochondria, right? With 1 or 2 words, could somebody tell me why? What's the key thing of all those different layers of mitochondria? What does that do for us? Anybody? Not sure? Yeah, so it's all about surface area, right? All about surface area. We need surface area inside of the mitochondria because we put just millions and millions of little proteins along that membrane on the inside. Okay, so we got the big outer membrane, which is this one on the outside, and then we got the inner membrane, which is the folded one. Okay, it's folded like crazy, and the reason it's so folded is because the more folds we have, the more places we have to put enzymes, right? So we've got all those little enzymes that are part of the electron transport chain, and then the one at the end that's on the back of this of all these slides, which is ATP synthase. We have to have little places to plug those in. Okay, so when we plug those in, then we got more room to do the oxidative phosphorylation, to do the electron transport chain, all of that. Okay, another thing that's super interesting about mitochondria is most scientists believe they tell us something about the origins of complex life on Earth. And one interesting thing about mitochondria is there's DNA found within mitochondria. So we have most of our DNA is in our nucleus, right? But then we have some DNA that's in our mitochondria too. And so you can have certain diseases which are driven by the mitochondrial DNA, okay? And one thing about that is you only get it from your mom, okay? You get your mitochondrial DNA from your mom, not from your dad, because in the sperm, it's in the tail. And when fertilization happens, the tail of the sperm is lost. It doesn't get in there with the egg. And so you're really just left with the mom's mitochondrial DNA. Okay, so that's one piece. But then the other piece is the theory, at least, on how multicellular life began, right? Because the idea would be that life started with just a bunch of little bacteria, right? These tiny little bacteria, other little single cellular organisms. And then at one point, there was one type of bacteria that used oxygen to make ATP and created CO2. Then there's another type of bacteria that's more like a plant that uses CO2 to make ATP and then releases oxygen, right? That's what plants do for us. So it kind of makes sense that if one of those type of bacteria got inside the other, like one just ate the other one, most of the time it destroys it. But they think there was this singular event, or maybe some kind of, or multiple times, but they think that it got inside and instead of destroying it, it was like, hey, you're actually making oxygen for me. This is pretty cool. I'm going to hold on to you, or you're helping me make ATP. Really, right? Is really what it was doing. It was helping the other cell make ATP, and it's like I'm gonna put you to work here. I'm going to keep making you make ATP for me, and that's kind of the going theory on how complex life form, because really this little tiny cell that just makes ATP across its border is really what bacteria are, and without and you just can't make a lot of ATP that way. You can't grow to be a big complex cell without a mitochondria. And so the idea there was that those two cells got together, and then the mitochondria was born at that point. So just some interesting points there. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so this other molecule here that we're going to be talking a lot about is ATP, right? ATP looks very similar to another class of molecule that we've talked about before, another one that's really important. So we have kind of a few different types of organic molecules that in biochemistry. We've got lipids, carbohydrates, fats, nucleic acids. This is an organic molecule. You guys know which category this one fits into? Does it look similar to anything else you've seen? So it's got a sugar in the middle, starts with an R. Okay, it's got an adenine up here, which would be like the base or like the functional unit. Okay, and then it's got a phosphate, but this one actually has 3 phosphates, right? So it looks just like RNA. It's very similar to RNA, except it has 2 more phosphates. Okay, so it's got the ribose that RNA has because it's a ribonucleic acid. Okay, and then this would be the A. Remember, like in RNA and DNA, we got the A that pairs with the T, the C that pairs with the G. Adenine is the A of those. Okay, and so it's a similar molecule to RNA, except the only difference is it has these 2 phosphates, or sorry, the 3 phosphates, but 2 extras. Okay, this is just kind of a crazy fact about ATP in the body. At any instant, each of our cells contain about 1 billion of these guys. Okay, but that's only about good to let us last about 3 minutes at rest. Okay, if we're exercising, it's gone within a matter of seconds. Okay, we've got 30 trillion cells in the body, so you can do the math. 1 billion times 30 trillion, that's a lot. Right? So this is an incredibly important molecule. It drives all chemical reactions in the body that require energy, and very important, obviously, for exercise, and that's why we're talking about it a lot in this class. Okay, so the way that we use it, so we use that energy in there, and the idea would be, actually I'll go back here, the idea would be that we have these kind of unstable bonds between the phosphates here, at least between these 2 last phosphates. Unstable means they're kind of likely to come off if they interact with something else that it might bind to well, okay? So these phosphates are likely to come off, and when we add a phosphate group to a protein or to something else, it typically will change the shape of that protein. Right, so just like we talked about with the muscle stuff, if you guys watched that video from class last week, when we put a phosphate onto the myosin head, it completely changes the shape of that whole protein, right? It shifts it a huge amount, and there's energy in that. If we can move something, that's mechanical energy, right? So that's a key piece, and that's how we use it. We use ATP, but in order to do that, we've got to get the phosphate off, right? We have to go through ATP hydrolysis, which just means adding water to an ATP, using a special enzyme to do this. And that special enzyme in muscle is myosin ATPase, okay? And that turns that ATP into ADP, so 2 phosphates, diphosphate instead of tri, okay? And then this binds to something, right? And then that gives us about 7.3 calories of energy per mole of ATP that we have. Okay, so the reason we're talking about ATP is because that's the end goal of breaking down all of those things, the fats, carbohydrates, and lipids. The goal is to get ATP. How much ATP can we get out of it, right? Because then that's going to drive those myosin heads and all kinds of other reactions that we need for exercise. Okay, questions about that at all? Feel free to use the chat or use the, just unmute yourself and ask a question. All right, so let's talk a little bit about those substrates that we use to make ATP. Okay, so carbohydrate, how much total do we store in the body? It's somewhere around 25 to 2600. And as we were just talking about, the majority of that is in muscle. We have a little bit in the liver and obviously blood glucose in the blood. There's a little bit there, but that's not really stored. I mean, it's there for use, but it's being used constantly. Okay, with fat, totally different, about 70,000 calories in someone who weighs about 70 kilograms and is 12% body fat, which is pretty lean, right? So tons and tons of energy, almost an unlimited store of energy as far as we're concerned with the amount of fat that we have. So fat's primary purpose is to store energy. Okay, where do we have that? We have some inside of our muscle cells, which is important for endurance athletes. Actually, endurance athletes will actually get a good buildup of fat in their muscle, which doesn't sound like a good thing, but it is actually because they need to use that fat right there while they're exercising. So it needs to be right there available. Now, type 2 diabetics and people with obesity can have a buildup of a different kind of fat in their muscle that's not as good, not healthy. So it depends on which type of fat it is that gets stored there. But then it's mostly adipose tissue, right? And so we've got that in 2 main places. We got it right underneath our skin. which is subcutaneous adipose tissue, right? And then we've got it also around our organs, underneath our abdominal wall. That's called our visceral fat. We'll talk more about that later when we talk about diabetes. Protein, as far as exercise goes, it typically only contributes about 5 to 10% of the total energy production. And when are we using it? Only for long exercise, okay? So exercise over an hour is when we start kicking into protein. And there's zero storage of protein that's just there for storage, right? We've got tons of protein all over the body, but it's all doing something, right? It's not there just for storage, okay? It's all being used as an enzyme, as a muscle, as some bone, as some cartilage, ligament, whatever it is, right? It's all being used for something functional. So anytime we burn protein, we're using tissue that would have been used for something else. Right? Doesn't mean it's bad. We're always going to burn some protein when we do long-term exercise, but obviously we don't want to break down too much protein if we're in a starvation state. That can cause some serious problems and muscle loss. Okay, and this little table just kind of shows you where it's all stored, different things like that. Okay, any questions on those? Okay. All right, how are we doing? Good. All right, so the 3 energy systems we're going to talk about here in class, and the 3 that you're going to represent on your concept map. Okay, your first concept map is going to be a map, and really it's like kind of like a bubble chart, like a flow chart, and you're going to start with the 3 energy systems. Okay, and you're going to pretty much depict how those get down to ATP. What are all the steps you go through? What enzymes are involved? What substrates go in? What things come out? Right, where is the ATP made? All those ideas. Okay, so you're gonna have that kind of at the top, and I showed you guys the example of this on Monday, and then you're gonna work your way down. So it's something kind of like this, but definitely more detailed than this. But yeah, so you'll kind of work your way through to get down to how much ATP each one creates. So we're gonna talk about the ATP creatine phosphate system, the glycolytic system, also known as the anaerobic system, and then the oxidative, also known as the aerobic system. We'll talk about those 3. Okay, so what you see here is the glycolytic system primarily uses something called glycogen, right? And then this one here, the oxidative system, is primarily going to be using glucose or another fuel, but glycogen can be used for either one, and glucose can be used for either one, but that's just the reason it's called the glycolytic system, this middle one, is because it mostly uses glycogen. Okay, and that's going to be stored in muscle right there, ready to use. And that's the system that's going to create lactic acid, which we'll talk about in a second. So the glycogen that we burn is right there in muscle. That's where it's found, okay, in the muscle cells. Again, we also have it in the liver, but not as much. And then where does the glucose come from? It comes from the blood. Okay, that blood glucose. And that blood glucose could have started as glycogen from the liver, right? So glycogen from the liver can be broken down, turned into glucose, and then released. But for the most part, yeah, that's where we find those 2. Okay. All right. So yeah, I wanted to yeah, let's just do these ones verbally, and then I was having some technical issues. I set up a couple polls to do on Zoom, but for some reason when I'm logged in with my iPad like this, it doesn't let me do a poll. So I have a couple later that I'll do in a sec, but I think we can just talk about these because these are pretty simple. So I think I'll have to disconnect my iPad from the meeting for a second to run those polls. So, so yeah, we can just talk about these pretty briefly because I think you guys probably already know the answer to these questions. Okay, so rank the energy systems from fastest to slowest. Yeah, and let's actually do the breakout rooms real quick on these. I don't think it should take us too long. I'm going to recreate them. Okay, so I'm going to send you to those here. And just talk about this slide and the next slide too, okay? And just come up with your answers on those 2. Designate someone to throw out an answer to me if I call on you, okay? All right, here we go. A couple of you need to sign here real quick. Oh yeah, Michaela, you'll hang out with me. Ryan, you are team 6. Okay, that's everybody. Yeah, if you guys, yeah, feel free to remind me of that. I've been bad at remembering to do that, so feel free to remind me of that. I would appreciate it. Okay, yeah, so any questions on the creatine phosphate system? Okay, super simple. That one will obviously be very simple in a concept map. The only thing that some students forget is just to keep that name that enzyme, right? So all the important enzymes I'll have in the slides, I'll talk about them. All those important enzymes you need to put in your concept map. You're not going to need to put every single enzyme in a Krebs cycle if you don't want. Some people like to just because they want to kind of really, that just is how their brain works. But you don't have to, okay? But the ones that I highlight in the notes and talk about and kind of have written on the side of images, then those are the ones you want to make sure you include in the concept map. Okay. All right, so glycolysis. Glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose to what? What does it get us to? Somebody unmute yourself and tell me. Glucose to what? I know somebody knows. I'm looking at you. Joey, what you got? I saw you unmuted.
Is it ATP?
Not quite. Nope, not ATP. Good guess though.
Is it pyruvate?
Pyruvate. Who said that? I can't
Andrew
see
Masters.
it. Oh, Andrew, there you go. Thank you. Pyruvate. Perfect. Yep, glucose to pyruvate. That's glycolysis. Okay. What energy system is it a part of? It's a part of 2. Actually, it's part of that glycolytic system and the oxidative system. Okay, so it's a shared pathway of those 2 systems. What about glycogenolysis? Right, that one seems pretty obvious. This is the breakdown of glycogen. So whereas glycolysis is technically the breakdown of glucose, glycogenolysis is the breakdown of glycogen. Okay. All right, any questions on that? So the reason we're starting out with that there is because glycolysis is going to be the starting point for both the glycolytic system and the oxidative system. Okay, so here's what this is where I wanted to try to use the poll real quick. So let me just exit the meeting from my iPad. Let's see if it's going to let me do this. Okay, and then let's try it. Okay, so yeah, so let's go ahead and answer these 2 questions. Now you guys can't see those, huh? I got to share my screen here. Hold on one sec. I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. Okay, maybe I'm not. Shoot, sorry guys, I thought I was going to do something fancy and do a poll, but that is not working. Still saying I can't do it because I'm logged in from another device. Okay, well, shoot. All right, we won't do a poll, but I can send you into your breakout rooms again and have you answer these 2 questions as a team. Okay, so let's do it that way. All right, so I will send you into your breakout rooms. So there's 2 questions on the next. Actually, you guys don't have them in that order. Sure. So there's a question there about lactate. It says the hydrogen ion that lactate releases is responsible for which of the following? Okay, that's a couple slides down. I moved them up in my slides. You guys find that one? Okay, so that's one. And then the second one says the fate of pyruvate is decided by what? Okay, there's 2, just put a star by those 2 things in your notes there, and you're gonna answer those questions. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you found those questions and you know what we're gonna be doing here. Okay, maybe about half of you. That might be enough to get us through. Okay, let's try it. I'm gonna send you guys. All this technology is so fun.
Yeah, it's definitely an adaptation to try to do all the different devices.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like I did it ahead of time, set up these polls, and then, yeah, no, it just says if you're logged in from 2 devices, you can't use a poll for some reason. I don't know why, but no fun.
It's nice to have the integrated part because I like that you're having them do the
The breakouts. Yeah, yeah, I like it too. I think it's really, yeah. It's not the most fun thing to lecture to a screen. So the more I can get them engaged, the better, I think. Okay, so you guys should be able to see my iPad screen again. So let's start with that one. The hydrogen ion that lactate releases is responsible for which of the following? Okay, so you could have looked at it like a multiple answers are correct question if you wanted to, or not. But let's go ahead and get somebody from team 1, which would be Andrew Amato, Lily Larkin, Andrew Masters, or Hannah Velasquez. One do you guys want to pipe
Yeah,
in?
we said B.
You said B, okay.
Yeah.
So burning during and seconds before, or seconds after an intense workout. So during and after an intense workout, okay? Good. What else? Anybody have something different you want to throw out there? No? Not bad breath?
We said D.
You
Is
said
that
D.
incorrect?
No, I would agree with you on that one. Yeah, D would also be true because, well, why did you guys think? Did you have a reason, Joey? What were you thinking?
Lack of energy. I forget. Someone said something really good in our group.
We were just saying how
yeah.
like lactate is used as fuel.
Mm.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Where'd you learn that?
From the book.
Oh, awesome. You guys read the book. I love this.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Good. Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, the reason that, so definitely it's used as fuel. That wouldn't necessarily be the direct connection to the lack of energy, but the lack of energy one would be, so all those enzymes that help us make ATP, so all the glycolytic enzymes, all the oxidative enzymes, they're all sensitive to the pH of the solution that they're in, right? So if we have a bunch of extra hydrogen ions, all of a sudden they start binding to all those proteins, they start unfolding, they start not working as well, right? So they're not going to do as good of a job making ATP if their shape starts to change a little bit, right? And the substrate before it, glucose 6-phosphate, doesn't fit quite as well as it did before, right? Because it's a little bit of a different shape, right? So that's kind of the connection there. It slows down our metabolism because of that drop in pH. But it definitely is used as a fuel too. Thank you, Nicole, for reading the book. Cool. Good. And so has anybody heard that like actually when you're really sore, you should go for a walk or go for a run to get the lactate out like the next couple days, right? How many people have heard something like that? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, right. And this was just kind of an old mentality, right? Old thinking that lactate's there, right? But the book says the lactate's all gone within like an hour or two after the workout, right? If you read that part of the book, the lactate's gone. Way before. So, but delayed onset muscle soreness, we're talking like 48 to 72 hours after the workout. So that has nothing to do with lactate, right? Zero to do with lactate. Okay. And then even hours after workout, no, nothing to do with it. Lactate's gone, right? So A and C are definitely not true. Okay. So the soreness is caused by the immune system and the inflammation caused by some small little micro tears in muscle. We'll talk about that more when we talk about resistance training. Okay, what about this next one here? Let's go team 2, Amanda Harrington, that group, Bailey, Laura, what do you guys got?
We said B for that one.
You said B for that one, okay? So the speed that energy is required to be produced by exercise demand. That's a good answer. I like that answer. Okay, anybody have something different? I was too obvious with my response to that one. But most people say A, usually, right? How many people's first guess was A when you looked at it? Yeah. Was that Amanda that piped in, or who said that the first time?
Yeah, that was me.
That was you. Where'd you get the answer from? The book again? B?
Sure. I guess like, I don't know, like another class. I think we learned something like
Okay.
that.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, because typically even in the biology classes like Bio 2010 and stuff, A will be the answer to that question. So it's typically been really only in this class that we kind of get at this idea that it's a little bit more nuanced than just whether oxygen is present or not, because that's how it was when Louis Pasteur had bacteria and he put glucose in there with them. And he did it with oxygen, and they used the oxidative system, and then he did it without oxygen, and they used the glycolytic system. That was kind of the initial, like how we figured out, oh, oxygen is the key to this one system, and if we don't have it, we use the other system, right? But it's way more complex than that in humans, right? And there's this huge debate that happened in the late 80s on this and early 90s, where people were just fighting over this whole topic, and some of the evidence to show to that B answer, which showed that, well, they actually measured oxygen levels inside of a muscle cell during intense exercise. And what they saw that there's oxygen still there, but we're using the glycolytic system, right? So that was evidence right there that like, wait, it's not just about oxygen, because there is oxygen, but we're using the glycolytic. And then secondly, they had evidence of always having resting lactate levels in the blood, right? Even if you're just sleeping, there's lactate in your blood, right? So obviously not pushing yourself really hard. And then there's other lines of evidence too, but it definitely is a little bit more nuanced of a situation, and it has a lot to do with how fast we need energy, and that has a lot to do with how hard we're contracting muscle. So this has something to do with it. This is kind of like a half correct answer, C. And then the amount of mitochondria is going to be something to do with it too. I'll give this one a half answer too, because the more mitochondria we have, the more ability we have to make ATP with that oxidative system. And so we're going to kind of back up less ATP production into other systems, okay? And then definitely, you can't say this one's wrong, okay? A is definitely right. If there's no oxygen, you have to use the glycolytic system. But is that the primary determinant in normal practice in humans? Probably not, yeah. Okay, so we've gone a little over time. I'm going to dive into the rest of this in a video that I'll record and get posted soon. So again, study those hormones well for Friday. Okay, you need to come be ready right on time at 11 a.m. We'll start the IRAT right then. You'll take that IRAT. You'll only get about 12 minutes to take it by yourself. And then I'm going to send you into your breakout rooms. You guys will discuss, come up with your answers for the questions, and you'll take it again as a team. Okay, and so it's worth 60% of the 20 points for the day is on the team part. 40% of the 20 points is on the individual part. Okay, so you still want to do well as an individual, but you can rely on your teammates a little bit for those for 12 of the 20 points. Okay, all right, guys, good seeing you. We'll see you again on Friday. Please reach out if you have questions during the week, okay? I know there's a lot of, you guys got a lot going on, a lot of different things you're trying to juggle with this semester. So just reach out if you got a question, okay? I'm happy to respond and answer, help you understand what's expected of you, okay? Have a good rest of your day, guys. See you soon.
I actually had a quick
Thank you.
Yeah, you're